was a really flattering angle, I'm sure. Recently, I decided to go on a trip since I finally got some time off of work. There's this one place that I've been dying to go for years now since I've heard it has scenic views, extravagant culture, and welcoming people. It's been talked about so much that I couldn't not pack my bags to see the sights and tour the lands of the country of Animanga. That's right, I was an anime and manga tourist, and these are my stories. My trip was exhausting, so I'm going to be spending this entire video lying on the floor. I used to watch these videos by Tessa Violet that she called Pillow Talk, so that's basically where I got this idea from. Let's just hope that this isn't the most unflattering angle of me ever, but it's me, so no unflattering angles. The tourism industry in the anime and manga community has been growing steadily in the last year now. And no, I don't mean actual tourism. I mean the tourism that the community has started to use as an insult for anyone possibly new to anime and manga. If you live off the internet, then don't watch this video. You're free. You can be blissfully unaware of the chronically online people who watch and read what you watch and read. You don't need to know about this. Run! For anyone else who doesn't heed that warning, you can come along with me for a dive in the dumpster. Traditionally, a tourist is just a person who is not from a place and is going to visit said place. Maybe they don't know the language or much about the culture, but they hit up the most well-known spots to experience a city, a country, what have you. If you looked up what tourist meant in Urban Dictionary, you'd kind of get a similar meaning as well. Instead of a person visiting a place though, they're visiting a fandom or a niche interest community. That ambulance is for me because my back already hurts. Tourist. An individual who takes part in certain activities or attends particular meetings because they are trendy or popular, usually without regard to whether or not such activities or the subject matter of such activities interest or pertain to them at all. Being a tourist often has negative connotations in the real world. We already have the trope of the dumb, loud American going overseas, disrupting communities, and generally just being entitled. Plus, the tourism industry has a history of displacing locals and contributing to environmental pollution. Because of this, calling people tourists as an insult isn't a new thing. However, calling someone a tourist in a fandom kind of is. Mostly, it's just the new insult of the week for anyone who doesn't look or think like the collective conscious of the Animanga community. So, what actually makes you a tourist in this community? What kind of person is deemed a tourist and what kind of person isn't? Well, I typed in anime tourist or manga tourist in the Twitter search bar to kind of see what the consensus is. And then I jumped out of my window. According to these users, you are an anime tourist if you disagree with the following. If you don't like sexy anime girls, minors, you might be a tourist. If you don't like fan service, you might be a tourist. If you got into anime or manga during the pandemic, you might be a tourist. And if you have a critique of a popular series, you might be a tourist. That's weird, because I've been into anime and manga for a long time, and a lot of those things are what I don't like or do. Fan service almost always makes me turn off a series, especially if it's involving teen girls, and I partake in a little critique or two every now and then. Also, you might be able to count getting into anime and manga during the pandemic, because while I've been around the block, I came back to reading and watching in that time. So, am I a tourist? I grew up watching Card Captors, Fruits Basket, Code Geass, and Darker Than Black. I did my due diligence of having a glomping phase on DeviantArt and finding all my music taste in my childhood through AMVs. I may have been too scared to ever go to a convention growing up, but I did take any opportunity during Halloween to dress up as a really shitty cosplay of an anime character. Where then does my tourism end and my residency begin? Well, for someone who looks like this and makes content primarily on shoujo, anime, and manga, I will never get my citizenship. One user even called that being a long-time tourist. It's a horrible name, rebrand that. The country of Animanga has become a homogenous place due to them having closed off their borders, also known as gatekeeping. Yes, I'm going to be keeping up with these hilarious metaphors for this entire video, and you can't stop me. In fact, every city I visited on my trip to Animanga was exclusionary in some way, only granting access to those who look, act, and talk just like them. When I was a small child, it felt like the community was welcoming. It felt like the people of Animanga were looking for others with similar heritage as them. This metaphor is really falling apart right now, stick with me. But now it feels like the people of Animanga are pointing their guns at their brethren. There's many different cities in Animanga though. The city of Shonenville may be primarily visited by dudes, but there's also the city of Shoujo Town that might feel more inclusive to someone like me. Surely, there is some place that will welcome me with open arms. And don't call me Shirley. Show me around to the best spots in town, and when I find a place that I can call home, I can finally settle down. Watch or read some great series, dying in peaceful bliss, knowing I had a lovely time on this earth, and a place that I feel I belong. There has to be a place like that that can exist for me, right? Right, guys? There's a place like that, right? When I first heard of the country of Animanga, I of course had to visit the second most popular destination for anyone who is visiting that area, Shonenville, a lovely city that is located about 2 hours north from the capital of Ghibli, most known for its boisterous residents, fantastical scenery, and historic landmarks. I knew that I had to hit up Shonenville first to get a good feel for what the country of Animanga is all about. Although this city is just a little bit different from what I had imagined. First of all, the city had border control for some reason. I wasn't even allowed in until I answered a questionnaire that they gave me when they looked at my perceived chest and then nodded to the guy next to them. The questionnaire had things on it like, name 5 Dragon Ball Z characters, and so what do you consider peak? There was a person next to me who said they were going to be filling out Black Clover for that answer, and I didn't see them again. Luckily, they let me through after I answered everything to their acceptable requirements, and the gate was unlocked for me to walk in. When I first got into anime and manga, I read so much shonen. My favorites at the time were Bleach and Inuyasha. I read up to 70 volumes of One Piece, and Full Metal Alchemist was a full-on obsession. As the years went on, I started resonating with these series less and less, but I was still into a few like Haikyuu, Chainsaw Man, and Mob Psycho 100. Lately, I mostly just keep up with the current favorites of the shonen community through their anime adaptations as well. I never outright hated Shonenville. I just figured that Shonenville didn't need another resident with its overpopulation. I already kind of knew that this isn't the place where I belonged, and it also seemed like they didn't really want me there anyway. In Shonenville, anyone who is not a cis man is seen as a tourist. It doesn't feel very inclusive as someone who looks femme. You could be at the risk of targeted harassment just by saying that you think the treatment of a female character was done slightly poorly. Even the slight mention of sexism or assault that is pervasive in so many shonen series is met with the snide comments like the ever so common tourist. Never mind even calling out their misogyny. Believe me, I tried. I've already shown plenty of how the shonen community treats femme-presenting people in another video of mine called The Misogyny in the Manga Community. Anyone who even looks remotely like a woman is immediately questioned on any of their fan knowledge. Those that give opposing opinions or criticisms on popular shonen series receive hundreds of comments inferring their lack of intelligence. Even people who are just saying they don't like particular tropes that they see often are told to get out of the community. These things have happened so often to many friends of mine throughout the years. A lot of these people are even the biggest fan of shonen series that I've ever met, and yet the validity of their fandomness is still questioned just because of their gender. When I was staying in the city, there was still, obviously, many kind people who greeted me. They even wanted to talk or engage with me on series outside of shonen as well. We exchanged stories and had a grand old time just talking about some anime and manga that we loved. There was a plethora of different people who lived there who all had diverse backgrounds. However, it was clear from the town square who the most vocal residents were amongst them. It was the ones who were screaming mid-piece or blue lock clears at even the slight mention of someone else's favorite shonen, yelling at anyone whose taste only slightly diverged from their own, and trying to deport anyone who didn't have the exact same taste as them. It felt like a pretty hostile environment from my own time there. The quality of living also seemed to be dwindling because of them for other people too. Although many residents still stuck around because this was their home. This is what they grew up with, and this is what they enjoyed the most. They stay because they don't want this vocal group of people to be the ones to ruin their enjoyment, which I commend them for. I personally didn't have as much of an attachment to Shonenville, so after a few days, I packed my bags and headed to the next city 2 over, Manga-tuberg. Apparently, Manga-tuberg can also be called Annie-tuberg. I think it's because the residents who are older will call it Annie-tuberg, and the ones who are newer call it Manga-tuberg. It's pretty much the same place, just kind of called different things sometimes. They boast a large amount of famous attractions there, such as their golden trash bins, and a rare statue of a one-eyed wolf. It's about a 6-hour train ride to the heart of Manga-tuberg from Shonenville, and once you get there, it is so hard to want to leave. The first and only thing that you need to do to get into Manga-tuberg is log into your YouTube account. Once you do that, the gates open right away, and you can walk into the hustle and bustle of the content creation capital of Animanga. It all seems so dazzling and welcoming, and you see so many familiar names and faces from other places as well. You'll wave to them, and they'll wave back, and it just seems like such a beautiful community. That was until I found out that many residents of Shonenville had dual citizenship in Manga-tuberg and had made that place their main place of residency. I slowly realized that people in Manga-tuberg don't take too kindly to new folk. Or I guess to put it more bluntly, they don't care for femme-presenting people who talk about shoujo. As a shoujo content creator and Manga-tuberg, I was a bit of an oddity. While there are obviously many channels that talk about shoujo, there were still a scarce few that did video essay content solely about this type of media. A lot of my friends even told me to check out this city for that reason. I thought it would be kind of cool to carve out a little niche for people who really cared about shoujo content. I thought I could be the person to give some introduction to feminine media that is so often looked down on just for being that. I wanted to use my voice and my talents to do something worthwhile. Making videos on YouTube can be pretty fun right when you start, and especially if you get a big hit video right away. You keep making more videos because you're excited, you're passionate about what you're talking about, and you're getting a live response to what people like about your videos and maybe what you can improve on. To find people that genuinely like what you do and share in the interest that you have is special. Instead of having to go look for a place you belong, you can make a place that you belong. But then it sort of starts to set in that you are not making your content in a vacuum. People are watching you. You start to be perceived in a way that I just don't think a human mind can really comprehend. You see, there's one thing that's slightly off about Manga-tuberg. It may have a pretty small population, but it's the residents from the outside that makes Manga-tuberg seem bigger than it is. Residents from Shonenville, Shoujo Town, and so on flock to the gates of Manga-tuberg to catch a glimpse at someone who's living there messing up. Maybe you pronounced a word or a name the wrong way, and they've already flocked to their city papers to report the events of the day. Maybe a fact you gave that you thought was correct was actually incorrect, and they've already made sure to let everyone know how dumb they think you are. Their reporting even gets harsher when you don't fit into the mold of a cis white man as well. The residents outside of Manga-tuberg jeer at you, which puts everyone inside the city on edge. However, those inside of Manga-tuberg do the exact same thing. Slowly, many of the former residents of Shonenville were finding me in the city. They would just start by giving me an up and down look, scoffing, and then walking away, which nothing too crazy. A little later down the line, I started to notice more graffiti on the walls there. They would say things like, "Shoujo is trash" on it, which, whatever, made me a little mad, but like, I can get over it. Other times though, the graffiti would say things specifically about me. Every now and then, these graffitis would get to me, and so I would point it out and say, "Hey, does anyone come by to clean this up?" And usually the response was just, "You wanted to be here, why are you being so sensitive?" In fact, any time that I wanted to bring up an injustice that I perceived, I was told to shut up, or it doesn't matter. Residents in the city began to openly harass me, even trying to get me to get up on a podium and debate them in front of the entire country of Animanga. When I would just walk away, they would take that as them winning, and I was actually wrong all along. Some people would neg me. Some would just outright say they hated me. I just couldn't help but feel like it had something to do with what I looked like and the content I focused on, that I didn't belong there. I have spent about 2 years in Manga-tuberg. I came in having so much fun, enjoying the company of fellow creators or like-minded people. But as the years passed by, the constant bigotry, hatred, and vitriol has started to wear on me. My friends have seen me become a shell of the person I used to be, constantly feeling angry or tired from everything and everyone. I went into the city with a pep in my step, and now I might be leaving it in a body bag. Before it got to the body bag though, I wanted to see how one final place in the country of Animanga would end up treating me. I've heard great things about Shoujo Town, and it sounded perfectly up my alley. Obviously, I'm a huge shoujo fan. The reason I wanted to go to the country of Animanga at all was because of shoujo. It's a city of vibrant colors and an eclectic array of people. This should be the most inviting of all the cities I've been to so far, since everyone there should have the same interests as me. They like the things I like, and they have similar issues with the overall state of Animanga as well. Shoujo Town may just be the place where I feel no longer like I am a tourist. So I hopped back on that train and took the 3-hour ride to Shoujo Town. The population there is much smaller than that of Shonenville and Manga-tuberg. This despite the city having no requirements for entry like the other two. There was just a sign that said, "Be kind, have fun," which put a huge smile on my face, and I waltzed in there with no barriers of entry. Quickly, I was greeted by a swath of people who were just excited to see a new visitor, since tourism there is pretty rare. They asked me all kinds of questions about what I liked, my favorite characters, or my favorite genres. I felt at home almost as soon as I stepped into that city. The buildings weren't in the usual grayscale, but in pastel blues, greens, and pinks. Every morning when I would wake up there, I would stretch my arms above my head, and that song from the Barbie movie would be playing. Finally, I had found people who even knew about the things that I liked and shared in the same interest of discussing them with me. All of the residents may not agree with each other on what series they like the most, but we did know that even if our tastes diverged, it just meant more diversity in our small town. I never knew a place of such joy could exist, because it doesn't. I have been a fan of shoujo manga pretty much out of the womb. The reason I even got into anime and manga in the first place was because of series like Cardcaptors and Fruits Basket. Anytime I would go to the library, I would find whatever shoujo titles they had available on their shelves, and I would rent out every single one that I could possibly find. I feel like I say this so many times in some of my videos when I just talk about the nostalgia that manga has for me, but I would spend so many hours of the night just reading shoujo manga. It gave me such an incredible feeling that nothing else had given me in my life prior to that, and that is just why shoujo will always be so special to me, no matter what. The longer you stay in Shoujo Town though, the more cracks you start to find. While you are welcomed by a huge group of people at first, you start to slowly see them go back to their separate circles. They start to laugh at your opinions that you gave them on a certain series when you guys were being friendly with each other. You start realizing that they too have been writing writing about you in the papers if you said something that one circle didn't like. They'll start to privately discuss anything and everything you have ever said, although these private discussions clearly become more public as the days go by. Eventually, the gossip ends up getting to your own ears, and the rose-tinted glasses that you once wore in this city slip off your face. It actually looks like the exact same city as Shonenville, just with a pink layer painted over. Shoujo Town can be just as exclusionary as Shonenville, but kind of just in a different way. There will be times where the entire city can band together when someone shits on the area for no reason, but rarely does that mean they can keep getting along afterwards. There's infighting every day because someone said they liked a series that someone else doesn't like, or because someone says that you should be apathetic on certain issues that someone else doesn't agree with. Some circles gloat about their superior taste because they only engage in any media that was made before the 90s. They'll look down on anyone who doesn't read the exact same series that they read. The city of Shoujo Town began looking more like a high school cafeteria than any warm and inviting community. No one ever explicitly calls people tourists in Shoujo Town, and that's just because the words of Shonenville don't really apply here. They use the more classic Tumblr style of insulting fellow residents or visitors. Ever since the country of Tumblr was taken over by the Yahoo conglomerate, many of its former citizens had found new residency in Shoujo Town, making the culture of Shoujo Town's insults, cliques, and mean girl energy very reminiscent to that of the old Tumblr society. Even the hint of an opposing opinion will deem you the worst person on Earth. You might even be the downfall of humankind, or just, you know, the ire of internet gossip for your entire existence online from there on. I also realized that my recent stay in Manga was not helping me here either. Many people had already seen the reports of my mistakes in their papers. They spread these around to anyone who would listen, with one group of people even facilitating the spreading of these papers. Clearly, others were getting annoyed by people having talked about me, or some people just thought it was narcissistic to have even wanted to stay in Manga anyway. I mean, I get it. A lot of people think anyone who stays in Manga is pretentious, and a lot of people can be. I've never thought about myself this way, but clearly it might be coming off that way to others. That's just how the world works. It got to the point in Shoujo Town, though, where I would want a midnight snack and, you know, head up the local convenience store, only to hear the employees talking about their dislike for me. It's a small town after all. While I used to think the city of Shoujo Town is where I belonged, the more gossip I heard about myself, the more paranoid I felt about even leaving my house. At that point, I realized it was finally time to leave the country of Animanga and go home. I was exhausted from my trip, never feeling like I could truly be comfortable being who I am in any of these places. I had met some great people along the way, learned some new things, and even watched and read some new anime and manga. However, I felt worse than when I started my tour of the country. I thought I would love Animanga. I thought everyone would just be excited to find fellow dumb nerds to talk about things with. But reality is often cruel. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the metaphor for a second. I know it sounds like I'm saying I'm no longer gonna be a fan and I'm gonna leave YouTube. That's not gonna happen, and I'm sorry to anyone who wishes it would. At the very least, it's not happening yet. So go ahead and celebrate for the possibility of the future. I'm getting old anyway. I'm almost 30, guys. I've already entertained this idea, though, with the multiple instances of harassment targeted towards me throughout my 2 years on the platform. Each time, I came to the conclusion that this is just what I love still. Every creative process I go through is so much fun for me, and it is still outweighing the hatred that I might receive in the long run. So, will I ever be considered a citizen of Animanga? Or will I always be a long-time tourist? Well, I think it's pretty clear that until the community cleans up their act and stops treating anyone from a marginalized group like they're an outsider, I will always be excluded. We will never be seen as part of the community and their Wakanda for white men. Ironic, since most people who call others tourists would also be called the same if they ever went to Japan. Throughout my travels of these 3 cities, I did have fun. It can just get so tiring when you only see the worst of people at a steady and constant pace. If only there was a place like Animanga that took all the worst aspects of it and left it at the door. A place that respected their fellow brethren, made them feel comfortable for who they are with no isms attached. A place called Hojo. Yes, Hojo. Hojo Nation. Future citizens of Hojo, rise. We can make what we desire. We can be the ones to facilitate change. Join me, join the... Okay, yeah, that's stupid. That's all. This is just a dumb little rant video. I'm not doing all my research and shit. I need to relax for once, so this is what you get this time around.